Hey everyone, Tristan back with another video, and in this video I am reviewing the Focal Utopia headphones. These are $4,000 headphones, and I did not purchase these. I got these in for review, for evaluation. So I want to say right off the bat, I don't think they're worth $4,000, and we'll go into that some in this review. But yeah, they're very expensive headphones. So these are them here. They've got a really cool look and build quality. They are made out of carbon fiber for the most part, in terms of the headband at least. However, I believe the ear surrounds are actually plastic. It's got a beryllium driver. They're made in France, and I believe they are 80 ohms. You can see how they look on, if I put them on here. So they look pretty cool when they're on. They're very, very open as well. So when you put them on, they have virtually no isolation. In terms of, I can still hear almost everything in the room, and that's by design. Focal really designed these to be as open as possible as part of their headphone design. Everything you've heard about the cable is true. It is an insanely long cable here, 15 feet long, really quite heavy. I don't know what Focal was thinking with regards to this cable, but it really does sort of detract from the overall weight and design of the headphones, because they are really a heavy cable. I don't really so much mind the length of it, although they could stand to be a little shorter. They could stand to be maybe 10 feet or 12 feet or something rather than 15 feet. But the heft of them, when you wear them, these cables are kind of heavy, and it feels like they really do weigh down the headphones when you're wearing them. You can kind of just feel the weight of the cable, I feel like. They also didn't make it very easy to use aftermarket cables, because the Utopia use what they call a LEMO connector on the headphone. So it's sort of a connector that's not really very popular among headphones. And it looks like it kind of screws on here. You can kind of see the knurled knob here, but it doesn't. It just pulls right out. So they could have used something like what Sony uses on the ZR1 and the Z7, which I think is a really cool connector. It's just a 3.5 millimeter connector, and it actually has a locking connector. So on the Sonys, you can actually just plug it in and then you twist it and it can lock in, whereas this doesn't actually even have a screw-on lock or anything like that. So at any time, this can just pop right out. I don't understand the logic behind that. Maybe it's a better connector inside, more upgraded or something, but they used on the Focal Elir the 3.5 millimeter connector. So I don't know exactly why they didn't choose to do that on the Utopia, other than just to be different. The other thing is, in terms of the build quality, these tend to creak a little bit. I don't know if you can hear it when I do this, but you hear that? If I move the ear pad on the left, on this side, it kind of has that little cracking or creaking sound sometimes. To me, that's kind of unacceptable on $4,000 headphones. So yeah, I think the sort of build quality doesn't match the pricing point of these headphones. They come in a pretty nice box. It's pretty big here, and then you kind of pull this red tab to open them. It's got a magnetic closure, and then it opens up here to reveal where you can store the headphones, and then it's got room for the cables down here and your manual right here in the middle. Nice foam interior, but the Sony MDR Z1R box is even better than this box. The other thing is, it might be a little hard to see in this video, but the ear pads have these little holes in them, and to me it just reminds me of a sponge. When you feel them or touch them, it just reminds me of a sponge, and that seems kind of cheapy as well. So like when you're looking at these and sort of looking at the fit and finish of these, it just doesn't really seem like a $4,000 headphone. Also, the size adjustment on the band doesn't have any slots or numbers at all, so you can't match up easily, the left and the right, other than just by looking at it and eyeballing it. So, they could have added numbers or little slots on that. So while I do sort of think you're paying a premium for the made in France aspect of these headphones, I do think that they are definitely overpriced. Now let's get on to the sound of these. They are quite resolving headphones, but I do need to say right off the bat that they are not my preferred sound signature. They tend to be quite bright sounding, and I actually prefer headphones that have more of an emphasis on the mid-range and the bass. The emphasis, I would have to say, on the Utopias is definitely on the highs. The highs are certainly very resolving. It has a really nice soundstage, but to me they sounded a bit bright and thin. Now that can be helped depending on which amp you're using with these, because they do scale pretty well. So if you're using maybe a tube amp, which tends to be a little bit darker, these may be very good for you. I did try them on a slightly darker solid state amp, which is the Cavalli Liquid Carbon, which tends to have sort of a tube-like sound signature. That did improve the sound of these for me a little bit. But when it came down to it for me, the Utopias just were a bit too bright for my liking. My ears tend to be a little bit sensitive to highs. The highs on these are definitely quite sort of impactful. So it's definitely not my favorite sort of sound signature. You know, the frequency response on these, I think, tend to lean towards powerful highs, whereas I prefer more of a flat or even more mid-rangey sound signature than the Utopias provide me. And in fact, I did get faster listening fatigue when listening to the Utopias than I do on other headphones that I typically listen to, such as the AudioQuest Nighthawks or my new Sony MDR Z1R headphones. And the other thing is, when comparing these to those two headphones, I found that the Utopias kind of lacked the involvement and the sort of bass response that I really like. And also the vocals weren't quite as smooth as well. They were a little bit more abrasive and a little bit more harsh. So if you have equipment that's kind of dark, or if you actually prefer a bright sound, highly resolving, very precise sound, especially in the highs, the Utopias may be the headphones for you. But for me, I really don't think that they're worth the $4,000. Now, I know people are going to ask, how do these compare with the Focal Utopia? Are they worth the over $3,000 upgrade price to get the Utopias over the Utopia if you're thinking about both those two headphones? Well, I would have to say that if you've decided the Focal sound signature is one that you like and that you want to go towards, I would have to say no. The Utopias, to me, are not worth the $3,000 upgrade over the $1,000 Utopia. I would just probably go ahead and get the Focal Utopia for $1,000. I mean, you can buy a hell of a lot with $3,000. I'm sorry, but $4,000 is just too high for these headphones. Just my opinion. Now, in terms of the Soundstage on the Utopias, the Soundstage is really quite nice. It's quite wide. Although, if you're looking for a headphone with excellent sound staging, look towards the 1700 something Sennheiser HD800Ss, which I would actually prefer over these. Granted, those don't have quite the bass response of the Utopias. I think the Soundstage is actually better on the Sennheisers, which are less than half the cost of these, although the Soundstage on these is really quite good. The Utopias have a beryllium driver, whereas the cheaper Utopias have a aluminum magnesium driver. The beryllium driver is supposed to have more of a sort of damping factor and, you know, just be more rigid to perform a lot better. And, you know, you do hear a little bit of a difference, but again, is it a $3,000 difference? In my opinion, absolutely not. If you prefer a sort of smooth, involving, and almost tube-like sound signature, I don't think the Focal Utopias are going to be the headphones for you. On the other hand, if you like highly resolving, bright, sort of impactful on the highs headphones, these might be headphones that you will want to consider. But I would really recommend also considering the Focal Utopias, which are $3,000 less than these, and I think are a good price performer in the price range, if that's a sound signature that you're looking for, versus the Utopias, which I don't think are worth the $4,000 basically. And I said this in my Focal Utopia reviews. I thought the Utopias actually perform above their price point, whereas the Utopias, to me, perform below their price point. And so that's a real negative about these headphones, in my opinion. On the plus side, they do scale really well. So if you have an amplifier that tends to be kind of dark, or if you're running only a tube amp, which tends to maybe be a little bit on the dark side, these might perform really well for you in your system because they do scale really well. However, note to me, the sound signature still does tend to be more sort of on the bright side. And on a solid state amplifier, that's definitely quite highly noticeable with these. To me, the sweetness of the Focal Utopias is really in the highs. But for my sound listening preferences, I don't prefer headphones that have, you know, quite impactful highs. These really do have strength in the highs, in my opinion. Probably fortunately for me in my pocketbook, these $4,000 headphones didn't really work well for me. But they aren't bad headphones. To me, the bass on these seems slightly lean. The mids are kind of nice and a little bit nicer than the Focal Utopias, but they're still a little bit on the thin side. So I think really where the sweet spot on the Utopias is going to be on the highs. The highs are really where I think the sweet spot lies. So to sort of sum up, if that's sort of a sound signature that really agrees with your listening preferences and that's something that you like, you may want to kind of consider the Utopias, but I would also encourage you to consider the Focal Illyrias, which are $3,000 less. They both have a similar sound signature, and in fact, the Illyrias have a little bit more of a bass impact than the Utopias. The Utopias, the bass is kind of lean sounding, a little bit lean sounding to me. The mids tend to sound kind of nice, but again, the vocals on these aren't really as smooth as something like the Sony ZR1 or the AudioQuest Nighthawks. Although the vocals on these, to me, are kind of, I think, equivalent to like the Sennheiser HD800Ss. Now, the soundstage on these is quite nice, although not as wide as the Sennheisers either. So that's my opinion. I'd like to hear your opinion, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments field below. And for pricing and availability, check the description field. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.